What up, man?
What's up, man? What's up, guys?
Good to have you on, man. Good to have you on.
Great to be on, man. Great to be on. It's been a minute since I've seen either of you guys. I'm used to seeing you guys on the road somewhere, but that hasn't happened lately. So it's good to see you nonetheless.
Life's a little different right now for all of us, man.
No question.
Appreciate you showing some JUCO love, man. Tell people your JUCO story real quick before we kind of get started, so they know where you come from.
Yeah, so I've been at a few junior colleges. I got my start as a GA at Kansas State, and then after that, kind of had a great conversation with Frank Martin. Frank Martin's like family to me. He was a big mentor. So my last conversation with him after being a GA, I had dinner with him, and he said, "Erik, you're a lot like me. You don't have this illustrious career, to lean on. You weren't an All-American, playing at a big time place. You need to build relationships. You can stay here on staff, but in some kind of support role. But if you want to coach, you got to get out there and coach." And so that's what I did. So I went back to Florida, and my first year I coached I was a volunteer assistant at Palm Beach Community College. That one didn't even make my resume just because they weren't paying me anything. But I was also on the side, I was coaching AAU. I coached for the Florida Rams on the Adidas circuit. And from there, I went to Lebec Community College in Parsons, Kansas. Probably never heard of it. I didn't until I got there. And spent a year at Lebec. I was an assistant coach there with a new staff. And on the side, I continued to coach AAU. I coached with Casey Run GMC, which was an awesome experience. Doing both of those 2 years was a really cool experience. And then from there, I got the opportunity to work at Northwest Florida for Steve Forbes, and worked with Jason Shea as well, which was awesome. And then I got my opportunity in Division I at SFA for a couple years, bounced around a couple Division I's, and then had my opportunity to be a head coach at Daytona State 3 years ago now. So and spent 1 year there, and then had a great opportunity to go work with Dusty May and a great staff at FAU for a year. So I've done my fair share of bouncing around, but overall, Palm Beach, Northwest Florida, Daytona, and then Lebec, and they were all awesome experiences. They've prepared me for where I'm at now, and I'm thankful for every single one of them. There were probably some stressful times during those times, but I really wouldn't have it any other way, man. Perspective is an amazing thing.
Yeah, how does the JUCO part play into now? I'll let BG take the next one. How does JUCO play into what you do now at the highest level?
Man, honestly, it prepares you to be able to wear so many different hats. You know what I mean? Like, and when you're at a place like Lebec or you're at Daytona and you're trying to, you're academic advising, you're practice planning, you're getting guys shots, you're doing laundry, you're wearing so many different hats. And then on top of it, the from a junior college, from a pure basketball standpoint, like, one, you get to coach and really like coach guys, and then two, you have to recruit at such a higher level, just because you're signing 8-9 kids every year, like sometimes more. So it was funny, the first time I got to Division I at Stephen F. Austin, I was so programmed that we needed to, and usually, it's one assistant and the head coach. Maybe you have a volunteer assistant as a second guy in JUCO. Well, I get to Stephen F. Austin, great job, Brad Underwood, great coach. I'm working with two great assistants, Stephen Gentry and Mike Boynton, and I get there, and we just need like 3 or 4 scholarships that year, and we recruit a couple guys, and we get a couple commitments early. And then I started looking around. I'm like, oh, well, Mike's recruiting kids, and so is Gentry. I was like, this is pretty nice. Like, we already got a couple commitments. That's it. So there isn't like that mad dash of like, oh, I got to sign 9 or 10 guys. So you almost had some pressure relief when you got to Division I, where you were like, okay, we got some help, and it's a little bit easier, to be honest, in some ways.
Right. People would never even believe that either, because I think there was 1 year where I was at Collin County. We signed 8, and then I went to work for Ross Hodge at Paris, and we had to sign like 11. Signed like 20 kids in one off season between 2 jobs. But BG, I'll let you take the next one.
So would you say that Oklahoma State has been a little different than junior college, or are they basically the same? Is that What was that, I guess, experience like when you'd been to Division I, you'd been to junior college, you've been to kind of all these levels, and then all of a sudden you're playing at the highest level and you're experiencing that. I guess for you as a coach, kind of, what are some things that maybe you miss about junior college?
Man, the thing I miss most about junior college, I mean, there's a couple things, and people think I'm crazy. I still, obviously I recruit junior college, but most importantly, I have relationships with junior college coaches, and I'll tell Hank this every once in a while at Indian Hills or one of those guys. I'll see him at a jamboree, at a JUCO jamboree, and I'm just like, man, I miss this. And they're just like, you're such a liar. And I'm like, no, I really miss I miss the camaraderie of just having, this is all great, man. It's great. Like we have unbelievable resources here. We have a great staff. We have everything you can need, but there's something about piling into a van and having you, maybe one assistant, and you're 12 guys and you guys, like, there's just so much, there's a little bit more of a connectedness.
Right.
Where, and honestly, those guys have, not that our guys don't, but there's a different level of that chip on their shoulder, man. Like,
for sure.
They're so thankful for every little thing. And, like their backgrounds, where they've come from, the things that they're trying to overcome, it speaks to a lot of coaches that are doing just such great work at that level. And that I appreciated, just because it was about more than basketball, man. You were really, really changing lives, and we all are trying to change lives, but there was just a little bit more of a deeper dive into it at that level, where you're really trying to help these guys.
I mean, there's definitely like beauty in the struggle, I think. And not that people want to struggle, not that people are like, doing it on purpose, but it just is what it is. There was something last night. I didn't get to watch the video, but they were interviewing Coach Cal, I think. And I don't know if you saw this, something about, what did he say? Something about like, oh my God, we had to take a 6-hour bus ride.
Yeah, it was something about, I think they were busing Atlanta. And
yeah, he was like, the 6-hour bus ride. And
he thought it was 4 and it was really 6. And
all the JUCO coaches are like, what?
Yeah, no, I guess they haven't hopped on that bus and driven from East Kansas to South Kansas to Western Kansas, or
Hank quoted something, because they went from Ottumwa to like 3 different places on down to Mississippi and then back, and he's like, well, I guess Coach Cal hasn't taken the Ottumwa to whatever route via bus.
Right. Yeah, there hasn't been those were the first introductions I got when I was in Southeast Kansas. We played Dodge City, and it's about probably a 4 or 5 hour drive from Parsons, Kansas to Dodge City. And we get done with the game. We felt like we got robbed a little bit. We played really well and lost. And we're getting on the bus at like 9:30, and we're driving 2 vans. So like, we get in that van, and it's like estimated time of arrival, like 2 a.m. And we're not hopping on a charter bus where I could just, where we could watch Netflix for 5 hours and then just get up, and like I'm driving that thing. So it's a little bit different.
But I mean, it's one of those things where, now, and even a lot of places, when, it's game time and you're on the road and you head to the airport and you get on the charter flight, or just if you're at a different level, you're not chartering, and you just kind of go through the motions and you do your thing. It's business. It's very business-like. It's, you're going on a business trip and you're doing all that sort of thing. And yeah, I'm sure you do miss out on a lot of what happens on those 12-hour bus trips, the like you said, the camaraderie and the things that you learn about each other that just don't come up in a normal day unless you literally have nothing else to do because you're in the middle of nowhere and there's a blizzard outside or something.
Yeah. No, it's like, it's a lot more simple in those situations where, it's not you're not complicating things with the politics of anything of like a higher level. I mean, it's literally just about you, some guys, trying to get them right academically, trying to help them grow, trying to help them get to the next place in their life. It's almost like I look back at it like, man, that was like a simpler time. It wasn't an easier time by any means, but it was just, like it was a little bit more pure level, what I mean?
We were talking to I think it was the Kingsville coach, and he said, he thinks junior college is the purest form of sport, really, because it's just figure it out, right? Like you got a game, you got to win, and you're here, figure it out. Like there's no hard and fast path to how to do things. You're going to have kids that you're chasing for academics, or you're going to have this, or you're going to have that. You just got to figure it out, right? And you got to kind of figure it out on your own, because there's not 20 people that you can call and say, okay, put the machine into motion to get done whatever it is that we need to get done. Like, you unfortunately now everybody's got 50 different schedules, and I'm sure a whiteboard with 1,000 team names on it, trying to figure out where do we go, what do we do if we get a game canceled. And it's like, right. I mean, when we kick off at the end of January here with JUCO and games start getting canceled, that's going to look like chaos because these poor coaches are going to be scheduling all that stuff themselves. And
but you know what? To JUCO guys' credit, like they're giving Division I's credit for turnaround and scheduling games like on a whim. Like JUCO guys are going to be pros at that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
like we're going to be, Hank's going to call somebody or like, hey, you guys want to play? And Brandon, to speak to the figure it out method, like that's probably the thing that from a junior college standpoint prepares you the most for this level, at least prepared me. Just an ability to figure things out, like especially as a JUCO assistant, like your head coach is dealing with so much stuff. Like you can't bring everything to him. Like you have to put out some fires, without bringing every single thing to him. And,
right.
And, that was when I got to Northwest Florida, that was one of Forbes, great, I learned a lot from him, but that was one of the things where, handle this stuff. Like, I don't need to hear about every single thing. Cause one thing that Forbes is elite at, to me, he's not a micromanager. Like he wants you, he's going to empower you to do the work, but, just figure it out. Like, I don't need to hear about every single problem.
Yeah.
And, that's been a really beneficial at that level.
Yeah, I mean, he only has time to hear about the fires that are going to burn down the building, right? Like all the other things that go on that just out of sight, out of mind, and he knows they're happening. He just can't hear about them because he's got 1,000 other things to do, and that's where, as a junior college assistant, when you really, I think, shine and you're able to make it so that coach doesn't hear about that. Hank and I talk about that all the time. Like when he was coaching for Steve Green, and is like, he would say that, well, this was happening. We couldn't find this player. This player decided he wanted to go home and didn't tell anybody. This was going on, and Steve didn't hear about any of it and was ready to coach on game day. And you show up and it's like nothing happened. Right. Like that means you did your job.
Exactly. No question.
EP, quick question. Tell us some funny stories about JUCO, man. We always talk about like the grind and all that. Talk about the funny stories, man, because I think that's some of the best parts about it, is because you are so close and you are so connected. You get way closer with your players and you have way more entertaining stories most of the time.
Yeah, man. I mean, honestly, I feel like in JUCO there's so many like funny stories that, like, if you've been in JUCO, you don't even really process like that it's an actual funny story. Like it's just like kind of common, like, first of all, like in JUCO, you can't take anything for granted that they're going to know, all these, specific things of like how we operate or how you want a program to operate, because you're getting guys from such a wide variety of backgrounds. I'll say, one story, and I don't know how funny it is, but it kind of connected to where I'm at now, because Bryce Williams, who's a guard for us, he actually played for me at Daytona as a freshman. He transferred from Ole Miss last year here, and he's having a good start to the year for us. But Bryce is a different dude. He's JUCO all the way. Great kid, hard worker, but just doesn't know what he doesn't know. So like I was telling Coach Mike this the other day about Bryce, and so we're getting ready for our first game at Daytona, and it's like a Wednesday night game against somebody, and it's Tuesday, like the day before the game, and he comes into my office like probably an hour before practice. He probably just got out of class, I guess, and he's like, Coach, he's like, are we practicing today? And I was like, yeah, why wouldn't we be practicing today? And he's just like, well, it's the day before the game. Like I thought we were, like. So apparently, like, he's not used to practicing the day before the game. Like that's like a resting day. And it kind of like, and again, it's not the funniest thing, but it's like your typical junior college thing where you'll just hear stuff like that on a daily basis where it's just like, it's like, man, I don't know where you were at before, but yeah, we practiced the day before. We even practiced a little bit the day of a game. You know, but it's awesome to see kind of where he's come from, you know, and all the way to this point where he's a senior at a Big 12 school making an impact. But you know, just stuff like that, man. Like they're like just guys that they don't know what they don't know, and you know, but there's tons of stories of you know.
I don't know if we'll have time to get to this one. We got a question for you though, Coach Jenkins. He said, "What's your best Kyle Church story ever?"
Oh man, I think the only thing that I have more stories of besides junior college stories is Kyle Church stories.
You have to tell people who Kyle Church is for those that don't know.
So Kyle's an assistant at Florida Atlantic. I worked with him last year, or excuse me, 2 years ago now, at Florida Atlantic. They got a great staff. Todd, who replaced me, and Akeem, and then obviously Dusty does an unbelievable job. He's one of the best I've ever worked for. Learned a ton from him. I'll be honest, like it's not the funniest Church story, but like the best one. And I think it's something that I know I've mentioned this to you, Brian, in the past, like, and I try to tell this to guys in junior college and at pretty much at any level. Like, so I met Kyle when he was an assistant at Chipola and I was an assistant at Northwest Florida. And for those of you that don't know, those are like the two rivals in the Panhandle, two of the best junior colleges in the country. And we were both rolling at that time. They had Sam Cassell Jr., a bunch of guys. We had Chris Jones and Elgin Cook. You know, usually you'd be really competitive, and we were competitive, but you would, you know, I don't know how friendly you'd be with those guys down the road. And but me and Kyle built like a really good, you know, a respectful, competitive, like friendship relationship. And it kind of bled over into when he eventually moved on to Louisiana Tech and I moved on to Stephen F. Austin. And you know, moving forward 5 years, I'm at Daytona as the head coach. Kyle's the ops guy at Florida. Dusty's the assistant at Florida. Dusty gets the Florida Atlantic job. And because of my relationship with Kyle, I had a relationship with Dusty, but I think Kyle helped, you know, kind of vouch for me in that regard. And I think that was really important. I've never asked Dusty to this day how important that was, but it speaks to the kind of person Kyle was, or is, excuse me, and our relationship. That's why I try to tell guys, like especially young guys that are like really passionate. It's like, that's great, man. But like when I talk about developing relationships, it can't be just relationships with guys you're recruiting or guys like you have no idea who may help you 5 years down the road. Like if I was at Northwest Florida and I was just like, man, I'm not messing with that dude. I'm not talking to him at all. Just because we went heads up recruiting a couple of times, like he's probably not helping me with that job 5 years from now.
Right.
So, you know, it's really important to have perspective, and that's, you know, I'm forever thankful for that because that, you know, as much as I love JUCO, you know, that was a great opportunity for me to get back in Division I.
For sure. Talking about Division I, man. Talk about Oklahoma State. Obviously, you coach one of the best players in the country, the projected #1 pick, and then there's a little bit of controversy around Oklahoma State being able to play in the tournament, not playing the tournament. Speak on any of that you feel comfortable sharing with the people.
Yeah. So I'll address the NCAA deal before I talk about Cade, and it's probably like the biggest misconception that like a lot of, you know, we've been trying to fight that a lot of people think we can't play in the postseason this year. You know, we've appealed. You know, I'm not going to speak to a lot of, you know, I'm not going to speak to details, but we've appealed that NCAA ruling. So as of right now, there's a stay on that ruling. So if the NCAA tournament started tomorrow and we had the resume, we can play in the NCAA tournament. So, you know, we'll see as that appeal kind of goes on, like what happens. But as of today, we're, you know, we don't talk about it around here because we're planning on playing in the NCAA tournament. That's the expectation here. It's always been here at this kind of program. And so that's kind of where it is right now. We're just kind of, you know, focused on every day, just just trying to get these guys better and trying to play as many games as we can in this environment. So as far as Cade goes, yeah, man. I mean, he's a really good player, but he's an even better person when it comes to just his competitive drive. Like I've had a lot of people ask me about him. Like I just don't view him in any other way. I mean, he's obviously he's a really good player, but the thing I love most about him is how competitive he is and how smart he is. He really, like, people, I'm sure there's a lot of coaches out there, like, all he cares about is winning. Like no, all this dude cares about is winning. Like, he doesn't care about his numbers. He doesn't care about anything else. And to our staff's credit and to our program's credit and his teammates, he didn't get treated any differently. And he doesn't want to be treated any differently, which gives him a chance to have success further, past here. But it's a lot of fun, man. It's a lot of fun to coach a talent like that. It's a lot of fun to coach a talent like that wants to be coached. Right. Which, you don't always see with those top guys, I'd assume. I mean, he's obviously the highest rated guy I've ever coached, but he comes in and watches film, he texts me, texts the staff, like, wants to get better. He wants to be coached. He wants to be competitive. We lost a game the other day and he was as competitive as he's ever been the next day of practice. And that kind of speaks to how he's wired. And I think it speaks to why he's going to be a really good player, for years and years. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's the defining mark between success and failure once you get to that next level, because the difference between success and failure is itty bitty, right? And it generally doesn't have a lot to do with whether the ball goes through the hoop, because you wouldn't be there in the first place if you can't. Right. But it's those things that you can't teach a guy. You can't teach a guy to be competitive. You can't teach a guy to give a crap, right? Like when you lose a game and he's so fired up that he has his best practice the next day and he wants to watch film and he wants to put in extra work and all that kind of stuff. That's what makes you a pro as opposed to a, hey, we'll see you in wherever you're headed next pro.
Yeah, no, there's no question. I mean, he's just wired. It's easy for guys, the more talented they are, to maybe look for outs in certain things. Like he
can rely on their natural ability.
Right. And he's just not wired that way, which really gives him a chance. And I'm thankful for it too, just because there are things that he's advanced on just on the court, not just from a skill perspective, but from a mind perspective, that, like, I'm learning from him every day, where I'm like, right. Like, man, he's advanced in this way, but how can I help him? Like, I'm trying to, and every guy, whether you're in junior college or Division I, you're coaching every guy, differently. You want to coach them all as hard as you can, but every guy, has a different level of understanding and a different level of where he needs to be developed. So it's exciting to be able to do that with a guy, again, that is coachable. Because I think in these days, man, like, you got to have guys that are coachable, especially when they have so many people talking to them, like other people that aren't with them every day, that aren't in practice with them every day, that think they have all the answers. And, for a guy like him, who I'm sure, like, all types of people want to, share their expertise. Well, he's in practice with us every day. So, he'll learn from our staff and we'll learn from each other. So he's been great in that regard.
So I got one last one. I'll let BG take one more and we'll let you go. So I'm fortunate to recruit one of the guys on your team. It's also a gold medalist with Cade, played on the USA team, and that's Isaac Likely, who's, also projected to be one of those guys that can play at the next level. So obviously I'm super biased towards him and his greatness, but I'm also from Dallas. You guys got a ton of guys from Dallas. May have more guys from the same city that's not your home city than any other school in the country. So talk about that. Does that play into you guys' chemistry? A lot of those guys grew up playing together, grew up in the neighborhood, played against each other. So yeah, talk about that a little bit before we let you go, and I'll let BG take the last one.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a huge priority for us, that area. There's a lot of history at this university with that area, going from Marcus Smart to, LeBron Nash to all types of guys. Texas, and specifically that DFW is really important. And there's a certain level of camaraderie with all these guys that are here. It's a couple of hours down the road, so it's not, I feel like it's far enough from home but not too far from home, where you
Right.
know, if they wanted to go home, you know, during regular times and spend a weekend with family, they could. Yeah, there's a certain level of camaraderie that I think exists, and like competitive nature, you know, like all these guys know each other. They played against each other. You know, Avery, Anderson, Chris Harris, obviously, you know, everyone knows about Cade, and you know, guys in the past, Cam McGriff. Isaac Likely is I mean, and Mike will say this, Mike has said it, you know, he is our unquestioned leader of this team. He's kind of that do everything, super competitive. You know, he's what we want this culture and this program to be about, you know, not just this year, but moving forward for years on end. But no, there's a ton of pride in being from that DFW area. I'm not from there. I'm from Florida, but man, just, you know, working at SFA, now working at Oklahoma State, like the sheer number of players that come from that area and produce, not just whether they stay in the state of Texas or surrounding states, or even go somewhere else. I mean, you've got high level, you know, guys going to mid majors that are just killing it. And sure enough, you check his bio and he's from Dallas, you know, or he's from Arlington, or he's from, so, you know, there's a ton of talent there. And I think there's a ton of respect within our locker room of the fact that they're all really connected. I think it helped, you know, between Cade and Ice and the rest of our guys, like there's a sense of pride, man. Like, and that's the one thing that I think you want more in the players that you bring into a program, a competitiveness and a pride about who they are, where they're from. You know, everything else you can kind of improve on as time goes on.
Coach, before we let you go, I wanted to ask you, you've worked for some of the biggest names in college basketball now, right? Like the names that everybody knows. Talk a little bit about Coach Boynton. I've gotten to meet him a few times. I've talked to him a few times. Seems like an incredibly genuine guy. And so maybe just a little bit about like your experience working with him, and, you know, maybe some of the things that you've learned from him here in your time at Oklahoma State. Yeah.
So Coach Boynton and I's relationship starts back, predates obviously Oklahoma State to our time at Stephen F. Austin. He was an assistant there, as was I, and that was my first Division I. I mentioned that was my first Division I assistant job, and he was already pretty experienced. I mean, he got into it like right after he was done playing at South Carolina, coached at Wofford, a few other places. So he's been. I want to say he's 38, but he is a super young, or excuse me, super old 38, because he literally got into Division I coaching at 23. So when I got to SFA, he was kind of my mentor as far as just how, you know, because when you're in JUCO, you're just kind of like getting in the car, driving wherever, very loose on like compliance. Like there isn't like a whole lot going, like you're just kind of getting players and figuring it out. Yeah. Whereas there's so much more that you have to kind of put together at the Division I level. So he was a big mentor for me, not just from a recruiting standpoint, but from just the coaching and how you operate in a Division I school. Because he was so polished already, because he had already had over a decade of experience.
I would have never guessed he's 38.
Yeah,
never.
And I might be lying on. He might be 39.
He's got to be one of the youngest head coaches in Division I.
Yeah. He's not 40 yet. And if he is, I'm going to lie for him and say something. So make sure someone tells him that. But yeah, so we had this really good relationship. We spent 3 great years at SFA, and then he moved on to Oklahoma State, and I kind of went my own path. And then we've kind of connected back, but we always stayed in touch. And he's one of my best friends. You know, people talk about, oh, that's my guy. He's one of my best friends. I'm not even going to say in this business. He's just one of my best friends. You know, got a ton of respect for him as a family man, as a coach, as a recruiter. So coming here to work for him was really a natural fit for me. I talk glowingly a lot about how great I think the situation at Florida Atlantic is, and how high of a level Coach Dusty May is. Like, there weren't a lot of guys, and people could think I'm crazy. There weren't a lot of guys. I don't care the level, man. Like, I want to work with good people. And that's more important than me saying I'm a coach at this level. And there weren't a lot of guys that I would have left FAU for, and Mike was one of them. And he's just really good at, you know, he's had to handle a lot of things that maybe fairly or unfairly have been thrown his way since he took over here. And, you know, I won't speak into detail about all that stuff, but he's handled everything with grace and class and competitive spirit to right the ship. And, you know, that speaks to his character and the way he is more than anything. And so just learning from him how the same way I learned from him during my time at SFA, I'm learning from him now as a head coach of how he handles day in, day out situations, but he hasn't changed. Like the same dude that was on a, you know, bus with me playing a Southland game, driving 8 hours to Corpus Christi for a game. He's the same guy. He's the same guy. He can afford a couple more pairs of J's. His shoe game is but he hasn't changed, man. The work ethic, the way he treats people, that's probably the greatest thing that I think, like, and with a lot of things that I think he does a really good job at. He treats people so well. And like he treats every person like he's genuinely trying to get to know that person.
Yeah.
Whether it's in academics, whether it's within the community, it isn't just about the people that could do something for him at all. And he's always been that way, man. If you ever go out to dinner with him, like he'll have a full conversation with the waitress or the waiter, and he'll be like, "Where are you from?" Like, and it's all genuine, man. Like it's all genuine, and that's what kind of I think separates him from a lot of people in our profession. You know, I liken him to an unofficial JUCO guy because he's wired the same way. He just never, you know, coached in JUCO, but I know he can have success coaching junior college kids, which he is right now with Bryce Williams. We got another guy, Bernard Kuma, on our team from South Plains. He kind of understands that mindset because he's worked for everything. You know, so he's been a great mentor for me. And then, you know, that's not to say just with all those other guys, man, I got to shout out, you know, Frank Martin has been, you know, he's like an uncle to me. He's the guy that got me in this business without question. You know, Brad Underwood gave me an unbelievable opportunity at SFA, and even you know, probably the most interesting dynamic of my coaching stops was, and I've talked about him a couple times, Steve Forbes. Working for him in Northwest Florida was probably the most eye-opening 10 months because I was still so green and so young, and I thought I had it all figured out. And I get there and I'm working for a guy, and bless Forbes and Shea that are both Division I head coaches now. But so Steve Forbes was coming off like Elite Eights at Tennessee, and now all of a sudden he's coaching junior college.
Yeah,
Northwest Florida. Jason Shea was an assistant at Tennessee, as was Forbes, coaching in Elite Eights. Now he's an assistant junior college coach. So these guys, like, I'm looking at them and I'm interacting with them every day, seeing them recruit, coach, and I'm like, these guys are a lot better than me at this job. And like they made it there, and then this happened to them. And look how they're like continuing to work and continuing to grind. And that's why, to me, it's not a coincidence that Jason Shea is the head coach at East Tennessee and Steve Forbes the head coach at Wake Forest. Like,
well, and if you know those guys, I didn't know them when they were at Tennessee, but I imagine who they were at Tennessee and how they interacted with and treated people and stuff was exactly the same way as in junior college. Like it wasn't this,
no,
you know, I'm here and now I'm here and, you know, whatever. Like you talk to Steve Forbes now and you would have if you didn't know Steve Forbes and you talk to Steve Forbes, you wouldn't be like ACC head coach.
Well, and that's like that's him just being who he is, man. Like he, you know, if you are who you are, you don't have to, you know, keep up with the lies. Like he just is who he is, and working with him and Shea was so eye-opening. Working with everybody that I've worked with at every stop has been beneficial, but that was so eye-opening for me just because I was like, man, like I had to have, and I've had bumps in the road, and me and Brian have talked about this, obviously, about our separate, you know, obstacles that we've had to deal with. And I've always gone back to like that, my experience with those guys. And I'm just like, man, like you can't have this expectation that everything's going to go right for you, you know, no matter, you know, what happens. I mean, you go to 3 NCAA tournaments and all of a sudden you're not really sure what's going to happen. Well, right. You know, you got to kind of dust yourself off and figure it out and make the best out of every situation. And I wouldn't change anything for my experience. And I guarantee if you guys ever have Forbes or Shea on, they would say the exact same thing because it made them who they were. And I will say this, that 1 year, I never heard them complain or talk about Tennessee. You know, they talked about it in a glowing way, but they never, you know, like they were focused on the job. Like they were focused on Northwest Florida. How can we make them the best that we can be? And they obviously did. And we had an awesome year. And I'm forever thankful. I don't think those guys really understand how eye-opening and how, you know, how beneficial that was for me in my development. That's helped me get to the spot, you know, that I am now. And, you know, I'm just thankful for it, man. I wouldn't want to work for any other kind of guys. I know a lot of people say that, like me and Brian have talked about this. Like, I don't want to coach Division I just to say I'm a Division I coach.
Right.
Like I'm not here for the title, man. Like I'd be just as happy going back to a place like Daytona. Like as long as I can impact people and be around the right people. Like I'm not going to just, you know, go work for anybody just to say I'm a Division I coach. I don't need the title that bad.
Right. Now you've worked for some of the best, man. Super excited for what you're doing. And you talked about Coach Mike, and I can't say enough. You know, I was in the same league with you guys at Lamar when you guys were at Stephen F. Austin and having those recruiting battles and those. It wasn't any battles on the court because you guys won all of them against everybody during that time. But you know, he's definitely a cut above the rest. He's a top shelf guy, character in class. He's a leader of men, and he just, like you said, he treats people. He hasn't changed from the same guy who was an assistant at Stephen F. Austin, who actually tried to get the Stephen F. Austin job when Underwood left. Didn't get it. A year later, he's an assistant at Oklahoma State. You know, at the end of the year, he becomes the head coach there. So awesome to see how guys worked in him. And, yeah, he's going to continue to be one of the top coaches in college basketball, in my opinion. At 38, he's going to be doing this till he's who knows how old, but he's going to be one of the best, and he's going to continue to stay at a high level. And excited for you guys, man. Best of luck. Thanks for coming on, showing some JUCO love. And, yeah, keep kicking butt, man.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. And, you know, I definitely want to, you know, let people know that, you know, JUCO, I'd assume a lot of junior college guys enjoy watching this, but, you know, JUCO, like I wouldn't trade my JUCO time for anything, man. Like JUCO has prepared me for where I'm at right now. And I'm thankful for it, man. Like I would have no issue with going back to JUCO. And I know Hank's going to call me right after this and be like, man, you're a liar. But, you know, but it's made me who I am. And you know, that has helped me just deal with the different things that I've had to deal with. And it's not a coincidence, man, that so many JUCO guys have success at this level. Like it's because, you know, Chris Jans, you know, I mean, you can go on and on, Kermit Davis, like all those guys that have had success at junior college or having success here. And so I'm thankful for you guys having me on, man. I'm thankful for both your guys' friendships. And, you know, I always see Brandon, you know, I told him he's starting a different venture every 3 weeks, it seems like, but it's awesome because it's all, you know, with the mindset to help people.
Right.
You know, he's always trying to help people. And Brian, you're always trying to do the same, man. Like same goes for the church story that I had. Me and you were competitive in the Southland and yep. We had a good, you know, we had a good relationship, man. I'll never understand some of the egos in this profession that don't think that they can have a good relationship and try to help each other while also trying to be competitive and beat each other.
Right.
You know, we all got to help each other in this business, and especially in these times. So I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate you.
Well, go kick butt. I know you got bigger fish to fry. The Big 12 is as hot as any conference in the country, so we'll let you get back to it, man. But appreciate you showing some JUCO love, DP.
Appreciate you guys, man. Thanks a lot for having me.
Be good, Coach.